you're thinking about moving to Vancouver and you're not entirely sure about what it looks like to live here day to day, well, in this video, I'm going to break down exactly the 11 things that you need to know before moving to Vancouver. And this is the kind of stuff that you don't see in the travel brochures or on Instagram photos. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which neighborhoods fit your lifestyle and what the true cost of living actually looks like and how the weather affects your daily life. And you can make the decision on whether Vancouver is truly the right fit for you. So make sure you stick with me right till the end, because the last point is the number one thing that surprises people the most. And it could be the difference between loving the city and wanting to leave in 6 months. And this is coming from someone that relocated to Vancouver from Calgary just over a year and a half ago. So you're going to get a first-hand insight of what it actually looks like and feels like to relocate to Vancouver. And quick thing before we dive in, I actually break this down in a lot more detail in my free Vancouver relocation guide and my home buyers guide. And in it, I break down all of the neighborhoods, the commute times, the home price ranges, the rental ranges, and what the lifestyle actually looks like and what to look for when you're moving here. And you can grab that in the description below, and it'll make this process a whole lot easier. And if you have any questions about what it looks like to relocate to Vancouver, or you want to discuss the different areas and neighborhoods and how it could affect your lifestyle, or you just have general questions about the market, I'm going to leave a link to my calendar in the description below, and you can set up a time to connect with me and we can help point you in the right direction. So the first thing to know about relocating to Vancouver is that Vancouver is not just Vancouver. The Metro Vancouver area has 21 different municipalities with over 3 million people, and every area, every municipality shares its own different vibe and lifestyle, and that's what's ultimately going to determine where you're going to land. However, there are some amazing alternatives that people tend to overlook, like North Vancouver, which is a very prominent with its mountain lifestyle. There's a lot of hiking, biking, different trails just minutes away. You're kind of tucked away in the trees, and it is very safe and family friendly, but it does tend to get more rain. You also have West Vancouver, which is a lot quieter, but that's where you tend to get more of the upscale housing. You have ocean view neighborhoods, and it's really car dependent because there's not really accessible transit that gets out to West Vancouver. So Burnaby is another great area just outside of Vancouver that is still very central and well connected to the SkyTrain, so you get easy access to downtown Vancouver. And there's a lot of new development coming in, mainly in the Brentwood and Metrotown areas. These are areas with a lot of new high-rise buildings coming in. They're urban centers with a lot of different malls and restaurants and transit. So it is very, very livable. You have a lot of great amenities, and it is a little less costly than living specifically in downtown Vancouver. You also have Surrey, which is another big area or city as part of the Metro Vancouver area, but because it is a younger city, you tend to get a lot more new builds, and some areas are highly developed, but some are still growing. But you tend to get a lot more space for your dollar opposed to living in downtown Vancouver or in Burnaby. And if you go just south of Surrey, you get to the South Surrey and White Rock areas, and it's a bit more slower paced here. You have the beach town vibes and tend to get a little bit less rain. There's more sunshine, and it operates at a slower pace. So it's great for families and a slower lifestyle, but it is less connected from a transit standpoint. So if you work downtown Vancouver, it could be a little bit more challenging to get there. You also have Coquitlam, which is a nice mix of urban, suburban feel. It is connected to the SkyTrain, so you can access downtown from Coquitlam if need be. There's also great options for different shopping, different malls, and you also have access to the mountains, which is super family friendly, and you tend to get a lot more newer condos, and it is a balanced lifestyle in Coquitlam. If you head just a little bit farther, you have the Port Coquitlam area, which is a bit more quieter of a suburb. You get a little bit more parks and riverside trails, and there's just a bit more space to breathe. It is a bit more of a calmer feel, but you still get access to the Coquitlam amenities, which is a huge plus. And then just east of Surrey, you have Langley, which is a super nice suburb. And the thing I love about Langley is it is a smaller city, but there's a lot of development going on there, and all you tend to get a lot of modern houses and townhomes and shopping centers. And because it is a little bit farther out, your dollar goes a lot farther and you tend to get a bit more space. So you get the smaller city vibe, like the slower lifestyle, but also it feels like you're in a newer area, if that makes sense. The drawback with Langley, though, is because it's farther out, it's not as connected to transit. So if you do work in downtown Vancouver or Burnaby, a car would be required to get there. So if you're considering relocating to Vancouver, I would really encourage you to dive deeper into which area or municipality makes the most sense for you, because everyone offers its own unique characteristics, its own lifestyle, and depending on what your life looks like, where you're working, that's going to be what determines which area makes the most sense for you. So another thing that you should know about moving to Vancouver is that you might actually not need a car. Vancouver is one of the few cities in North America where car-free living might actually be an option, because there's so many different ways to move around the Metro Vancouver, but it's going to depend on which area you ultimately move in. But you have things like the SkyTrain, you have the C-Bus, the West Coast Express. The Metro Vancouver area also has a really good bus network, and there are different car share options as well. And there's a really good network of bike lanes too. But again, it really depends on the municipality you end up living in, because some are more connected than others. Like if you live in Vancouver, Burnaby, Richmond, Coquitlam, these have the SkyTrain connection, so it's a little bit easier to move around the Metro Vancouver area. Whereas if you move to like Surrey, Langley, or the South Surrey area, it's not as well connected from a transit perspective, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging to move around. So just take that into consideration. If you don't have a car, you're going to be a little bit more selective on where you ultimately move to. So another thing that you should consider is that renting works a little bit differently here, because there's no agents that represent the tenants. There are agents that put up the rental listings, but there's no one that really represents people looking to rent out specific units. And a lot of the rental units are posted on like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, which is probably the most common one, as well as Kijiji. And a lot of the rentals tend to be like basement suites or investor owned condos and aren't really managed by like big property management companies. So in those cases, the landlords want to actually meet you in person, so you must physically be here. So again, depending on your situation, it's likely that you're going to have to secure a rental unit after you get here. So a short-term accommodation might be something worth looking into before you make the move. And one of the biggest considerations that you should know before moving here is how expensive housing is, both on the rental side and from the real estate and home ownership side. It's probably the number one sticker shock for people that are moving here to the Lower Mainland. And I saw an article that said that Vancouver is one of the most expensive cities to live in the world. And a large part of that comes from the lifestyle. And just to give you an example, if you're to rent in Vancouver, a one bed's going to run you anywhere from $2,200 to $2,800. A two bed is going to be north of $3,000. And if you're looking to purchase, if you're looking at a single family home, you're looking north of $1 million, and condos can be anywhere from 600 to $1 million, depending on how many bedrooms there are. And obviously, the further east or south you go and the farther you get away from the downtown center, the cheaper it's going to be. And the farther your dollar is going to go and the more space that you're going to get, because you really pay for the proximity to the city, the ocean, and the mountains when you're living in the Greater Vancouver area. So another big point of contention for people that are relocating to Vancouver is the weather. And yes, there is rain, but again, there is a little bit of nuance to that. And for me, coming from Calgary, which is one of the sunniest cities in North America, a lot of the people that I chatted with before relocating here kept telling me how much of a drain that the overcast and the clouds and the rain would have an impact on my lifestyle and overall my mental health, right? And to be honest, it didn't affect me as much as I thought it would. Like, yes, it can get a little bit draining in the winter months where it does rain for days on end. But for me personally, I didn't find as much of an issue with it. Personally, I think I would prefer the rain over the -20, -30 winters with a lot of snow back in Calgary. And the really good part about Vancouver is the weather is a lot more mild. Like, yeah, you get the rain, but the summers to me don't feel as hot. And for me, I don't like anything more than 25 degrees, and it very rarely gets above 25 degrees in the summer. It still gets super sunny, but because it's a bit more humid, it feels like the heat isn't as bad as it is in Calgary, where the climate is a lot more dry. And in the Vancouver area, the microclimates are real. You tend to get a lot more rain in the northern areas like North Van, Vancouver, and the Coquitlam. And then as you head farther south, like Surrey, Sawasan, and White Rock, there tends to be a lot less rain. So again, if the climate is a huge factor for you, just make sure you take that into consideration based on the area you end up choosing to relocate to. And on a more positive note, another thing that you also should be aware of when you're moving here that was a huge positive for me is that the lifestyle here tends to be a bit more outdoor and health oriented. Like I was saying to my partner when we moved here, like you don't really see many like out of shape or overweight people here. I found looking around, you tend to see people that are more in shape because there's just so much outdoor activity to do here. Like there's a lot of hiking trails, biking, you have skiing options just a few hours away, and you're really close to the option. So you have the beach there as well. And especially in like the downtown Vancouver area, you also have a lot of fitness studios and yoga studios and dog parks as well. So the outdoor physical health oriented culture is really part of the lifestyle here. And I've also noticed that people tend to care a lot more about their work life balance. So if being outside and active and social is part of your lifestyle, then it could be worth it. But if you're more of like a homebody or you're not as active, then the city might not feel worth the cost. So another thing that you should know about before moving here is the job market. And a lot of our key industries here in Vancouver tend to be tech, finance, healthcare. We have a lot of great options for like food and restaurants. So hospitality is a huge industry here. And you also have your trades. Another major one is the film and TV industry. So the Vancouver area is actually known as the Hollywood of the North. And since I've moved here, I've actually learned about all the different shows and movies that I've watched that were actually filmed here in and around Vancouver. I guess the drawback with the job market, though, is that in comparison to where I came from in Calgary and Alberta, I found that the salaries tend to be a little bit less here and don't always match the housing costs. And it's pretty common for people to have like remote work or working in more of a hybrid type situation. And I also know people that have like a side hustle or a second income to help them make additional income to pay for those housing costs. And another important factor, if you're considering moving here, is probably the food scene. Like, what are you going to be eating when you get here? And the thing I love most about Vancouver is you can probably tell with me being a bit bigger of a guy is that the food scene is insanely good. There's so many different options, and with Vancouver being a cultural hub, there's so many different cultures, there's so much diversity, and you get a lot of different flavors and contexts when it comes to your food options. There's a huge Asian and South Asian influence here with a lot of different like supermarkets within the Richmond, Burnaby, and Vancouver areas. And another thing I love about living in Vancouver is that there's so many different like farmers markets and fruit farms that you can drive to pick and purchase fresh fruit, especially in the summer. There's also a lot of great local markets like Granville Island, just to name one. Granville Island is right in the downtown core and offers a wide array of options. The drawback, I guess, with Vancouver specifically is the groceries. They do tend to be a bit more expensive, especially if you're buying produce in the winter. So just take that into consideration when you're making your decision to move here. Another big discussion point or point of contention for people that are looking to move to Vancouver is the crime. But the thing I'll note is that the crime is pretty area specific, because Vancouver and the metro area in its entirety, generally speaking, is safe to walk around. There are just some specific pockets like the downtown east side or Surrey Central that you have to be cautious of. And some of the main challenges in these areas tends to be the homelessness, the addiction, and a lot of the mental health issues, and narcotics tend to be, a major factor in it as well. But if you're in the suburbs like Burnaby, Richmond, South Surrey, Langley, this won't really be a factor. There's not really much crime in those specific locations. So if crime is a huge factor for you, as it should be, just know which areas to avoid. It's not the whole city or the metro. It's really just the downtown east side as well as Surrey Central. And another big point that you should be aware of is that your location is actually going to dictate your lifestyle, because the commute times vary heavily based on where you live, because there are a few major traffic bottlenecks like the bridges, the tunnels coming from Surrey and Delta into Richmond. So if you live in those areas and you're trying to get downtown or to like Richmond or Burnaby, it can take quite a while. And if you're closer to the downtown core and you live 5 kilometers away from work, it's not going to be a 10-minute commute because traffic is so congested. It could be a 45-minute to an hour drive. So again, the proximity is power. When you are living in the downtown Metro Vancouver area, there's almost always traffic. So just know which blocks to avoid. It's not the entire city, but the closer that you can live to work or the closer that you can live to the SkyTrain, the easier and the quicker that the commute will be for you. So those are the key things that I would want to share with anyone wanting to relocate to Vancouver. And if you got some value from the video today, I would ask that you subscribe or like the video. And if you want help comparing different neighborhoods or figuring out which area actually makes the most sense based on your lifestyle, your commute, or your budget, shoot me a message or drop a comment below. I'll also leave a link to my calendar and you can schedule a quick relocation strategy session with me. And remember, you also have access to my free relocation guide and my home buyer resource in the description as well. So thanks again for sticking it through right to the end. Again, my name is Mason Stepaniak and we will see you on the next video.